The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council shook as red warning lights flashed throughout Nexus Prime. Admiral Vexstar stood before the enormous holographic map, his forearms trembling as he watched another star system disappear from the display. The blue dot that had represented the Helios system for millions of years simply vanished, leaving only empty black space. Sector 779 is gone, Vexstar announced, his voice breaking through the universal translator. The Vorthok swarm has eaten everything. 43 billion lives, all dead. The circular council chamber fell silent. Representatives from 12 different alien species sat frozen in their seats. These were beings who had lived for thousands of years, who had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, who had achieved perfect peace and harmony in their societies. But now they all felt something they had forgotten existed, pure terror. The Luminians, creatures made of living light, flickered and dimmed with fear. Their glowing bodies, usually bright and steady, now pulsed erratically, like dying stars. The Nexus Collective, ancient machines that had replaced their organic bodies with perfect synthetic forms, processed the incoming data with growing panic. Their quantum computer brains, capable of calculating the movement of entire galaxies, now overheated from the sheer impossibility of what they were witnessing. Counselor Vexmoy of the Veltari slowly stood up. Her body was made of living crystal that normally reflected beautiful rainbow patterns, but now it only showed the dark emptiness of dead star systems. She had lived for over 50,000 years and had never seen anything like this. Our most powerful weapons have failed, she said in a voice like breaking glass. The ancient tools left by the predecessor race do nothing against them. Our reality-bending technology cannot even touch the swarm. Even our gods have calculated that they will be destroyed. The word gods sent a shiver through the chamber. These aliens were so advanced that they had created artificial beings with godlike powers, entities that could reshape matter with a thought, travel through time, and command the forces of creation itself. If even these god beings were afraid, then truly, nothing could stop the Vorthok. The chamber exploded into chaos. The insect-like Zephyrians clicked and chittered in their panic language. The energy beings of the Astral Collective sent out waves of psychic screams that made everyone's minds ache. The mechanical representatives of various robot civilizations beeped and whirred as their systems overloaded from stress. But in all this noise and fear, one voice spoke quietly from the back of the chamber. Old Archivist Krelton, keeper of the forbidden knowledge, sat hunched over his data terminal. His 6 eyes glowed as he accessed files that had been locked away for 10,000 years. His shaking hands moved across controls that brought up warnings and documents covered in security seals. There is one possibility, Krelton whispered, but his voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics. Everyone fell silent to listen. In the restricted archives, there are records of a quarantine system, a species so dangerous, so unpredictable, that even the cosmic entities fled from their home world. The other council members leaned forward. Quarantine systems were rare, usually reserved for planets with deadly diseases or unstable technology. But a species that scared cosmic entities, that was unheard of. Tell us, Admiral Vexstar demanded. Krelton's eyes flickered as he read the ancient files. They call themselves humans. They live on a small blue planet called Terra, in a system they named Sol. 10,000 years ago, when our civilizations first encountered them, they were primitive. They had barely developed spaceflight, but they were, wrong somehow. Wrong. How? Counselor Vexmiwi asked. They never stopped fighting, Krelton continued, his voice growing even quieter. Every other intelligent species in the galaxy eventually evolved past warfare. They achieved peace, unity, transcendence, but not humans. They kept fighting each other, even as they developed technology that could destroy their own planet. They created weapons that violated the laws of physics. They built machines that should not have been possible, and they smiled while doing it. The chamber was dead silent now. The idea of a species that never achieved peace was horrifying to these advanced civilizations. The cosmic entities, the old ones who existed before the first stars were born. They investigated this human species. These beings have seen the birth and death of universes. They have watched civilizations rise and fall across billions of years. Nothing scares them. Krelton paused, looking up from his screen. But after studying the humans for just a few years, the old ones retreated. They sealed off the human system and declared it forbidden territory. What did they find? Someone, whispered Krelton, as six eyes, all focused on the council members. The report simply says, this species makes the gods themselves, uneasy. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The idea was almost too terrible to consider. But as another star system blinked out on the holographic map, they all realized they had no choice left. The Vorthok swarm was unstoppable by conventional means. They would have to wake the species that scared gods. The combined alien fleet traveled through folded space for 3 long cycles, moving toward a system that had been forbidden for 10,000 years. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the navigation displays count down the distance to Sol. His 4 hands gripped the control console as they approached the quarantine barrier that had kept humanity locked away from the rest of the galaxy. Approaching the seal, reported his navigation officer, a crystalline being whose voice rang like wind chimes. Energy patterns are ... unusual. The quarantine barrier appeared on their screens as a shimmering wall of energy that surrounded the entire solar system. It had been built by the cosmic entities themselves, designed to contain whatever lived inside. As their ships passed through it, Vextar felt a strange chill run through his exoskeleton. "Sensors online," he commanded. "Show me what we're dealing with." The moment their scanning systems activated, every alarm on the bridge began screaming. The small blue-green planet called Earth blazed with energy signatures that should have been impossible. Massive structures orbited the world, bristling with weapons that made Vextar's tactical computers crash and restart repeatedly. "This cannot be correct," whispered his science officer, staring at the readings. "That planet should not be able to support this level of technology. The energy output alone should have torn their solar system apart." But it was not just the planet that defied understanding. Ships moved through space around Earth in patterns that hurt to look at. They twisted and turned in ways that violated the basic laws of physics, appearing in multiple places at once, moving faster than light, without using any known propulsion systems. "Sir," called the communications officer, her voice shaking, "we are receiving a transmission from the surface. They want to meet with us." An hour later, Admiral Vextar found himself aboard a human vessel called the Soul's Fury. The name itself was disturbing. Why would anyone name a ship after anger? The interior of the human ship was unlike anything in the Galactic Fleet, where alien vessels were designed for beauty and harmony. This ship felt like a weapon that happened to carry people. Captain Park. Jin-Ho entered the meeting room wearing simple, green clothing that the translator identified as military fatigues. He was not impressive to look at, just another bipedal carbon-based life form with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. He was smaller than most of the alien representatives, with dark hair and dark eyes. But something was wrong with those eyes. They held a depth that made the assembled aliens uncomfortable. When Jin-Ho looked at them, it felt like he was seeing through them, calculating their weaknesses, planning how to defeat them. Without meaning to, every alien in the room took a step backward. "Welcome to our neighborhood," Jin-Ho said, settling into his chair with casual ease. "I understand you have a problem." Admiral Vextar activated his translator and began explaining about the Vorthok swarm. He told the human about the billions of dead worlds, the failed weapons, the retreating gods. He spoke of civilizations that had existed for millions of years being wiped out in days. Jin-Ho listened, without expression, occasionally nodding. When Vextar finished, the human leaned back in his chair and smiled. It was not a comforting smile. "So you're telling me," Jinho said, "that this Vorthok thing has eaten thousands of worlds. Your gods are hiding under their beds, and now you want us to clean up your mess." The translator struggled with Jinho's casual tone. Among galactic species, cosmic threats were discussed with grave ceremony and ritual respect. This human talked about universe-ending dangers like they were everyday problems. "The swarm has never been defeated," Vextar said carefully. "They have consumed entire galactic arms. They are inevitable, unstoppable, beyond the power of everything's. Stoppable if you hit it hard enough," interrupted another voice. The aliens turned to see Commander Lee Subin approaching from the tactical display station. Her hands were covered in scars that spoke of violent encounters. She moved like a predator, every step calculated and purposeful. As she passed near the holographic display, her fingers traced patterns across weapon trajectories and battle formations. "The real question," Subin continued, "is what you haven't tried yet. You've thrown your fancy weapons at them, tried your reality-bending tricks, sent your artificial gods to fight them. What else have you got?" The aliens exchanged confused looks. Counselor Vexmui, her crystal body reflecting the room's lights, spoke hesitantly. "We have tried everything. Our most advanced civilizations have technologies that can reshape matter, control time, manipulate the forces of creation itself. And none of it worked," Jinho observed. "Interesting. You speak as if this is merely a tactical challenge," Admiral Vextar said, his forearms gesturing in bewilderment. "The Vorthok swarm represents the end of all organized life in the galaxy." Jinho and Subin looked at each other and smiled. The aliens felt their breathing systems falter at those smiles. "Sir," Subin said to Jinho, "remember the last time someone told us something was impossible to kill?" "The Titan-class battle moon over Europa," Jinho replied. "That was a fun Tuesday." The casual way they discussed destroying something called a Titan-class battle moon made every alien in the room question their decision to come here. These humans spoke of cosmic-level threats, like minor inconveniences, like problems to be solved, rather than forces to be feared. As the meeting continued, one thought echoed through every alien mind. Maybe the quarantine had not been meant to protect the galaxy from humans. Maybe it had been meant to protect humans from the galaxy. Within minutes of the meeting ending, something began happening throughout. The soul system that made the alien observers question everything they thought they knew about warfare. Hidden bases that had been invisible to their scanners suddenly blazed to life. Massive doors opened in asteroids, revealing hangars that should not have been able to fit inside such small rocks. The dark side of Earth's moon split apart like an opening flower, releasing swarms of ships that had been waiting in silence. Admiral Kim Minsu stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the greatest war fleet in human history assemble before his eyes. The ship was called the Ancient's Wrath, and like its captain, it bore the scars of countless battles. Minsu's face was marked by old wounds that had healed but never faded, telling the story of a man who had survived fights that should have killed him. "Status report," he called out to his crew. 200 vessels reporting ready for deployment. Came the response from Lieutenant Choi Hyjin at the communication station. Her voice was calm and professional, but her eyes held the same dangerous light as her admiral's. "The Council fleet is asking for our battle plans and tactical formations." Minsu looked at the main display, where alien ships floated in perfect geometric patterns. Their vessels were beautiful things, all flowing curves and glowing energy fields. They moved through space like dancers, graceful and elegant. Even their weapons were works of art, designed to destroy with style and beauty. The human ships were different. They looked like they had been designed by creatures who understood only violence and built by engineers who had gone insane from too much war. Angular metal hulls bristled with weapons that seemed to grow from the ships like tumors. Energy patterns around them flickered and twisted in ways that hurt to look at directly. Sir, Hyjin continued, the aliens want to know our formation, strategy, and weapon deployment patterns. Minsu's scarred face split into a grin that made the alien observers on his bridge unconsciously step toward the exit doors. They had requested permission to witness human military operations, but now they were regretting that decision. Tell them we don't have plans, Minsu said, his voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years of human warfare. We have solutions. The alien observers looked confused. One of them, a tall blue creature with too many eyes, spoke up through its translator. But surely you must have tactical formations, strategic deployments, coordinated attack patterns. We do, replied Commander Park Dongyan from the weapons station. We call it find the enemy, and break everything they have until they stop moving. The aliens exchanged worried glances. These humans spoke of warfare like it was a simple task, like destroying cosmic-level threats was just another day at work. It was deeply unsettling to species that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of civilized conflict resolution, as the combined human and alien fleet began moving toward the edge of the solar system. Strange things started happening around the human ships. Space itself seemed to bend and twist near their hulls. Stars appeared to flicker when viewed through their energy fields. The very fabric of reality looked unstable in their presence. Lieutenant Yu Minho at the sensor station called out a report that made everyone on the bridge pause. Sir, we're detecting unusual readings from the enemy scout ships, the biovessels that have been monitoring the outer system. They're retreating. This news sent a wave of shock through the alien observers. The Vorthok had never retreated from anything. They were a species that consumed entire galaxies without hesitation, that had faced down the weapons of gods without blinking. Yet now they were pulling back from a small human fleet that had not even engaged them yet. Why are they running? Asked the blue alien observer, its multiple eyes wide with confusion. Minsu studied the tactical display, watching as red dots representing enemy scouts moved away from the advancing human fleet. They're smart, he said simply. They can sense what we are. And what are you? The alien pressed. Commander Lise looked up from her position at the tactical station. Her hands, scarred from battles the aliens could not imagine, traced patterns across holographic weapon displays. We're the thing that kills gods, she said matter-of-factly. Far out in the darkness between stars, ancient entities that had existed since before the first galaxies formed began to stir. These were beings of unimaginable power, cosmic forces, that had shaped the universe itself. But they were not awakening to face the new threat approaching through space. They were hiding deeper. The old ones, who had witnessed the birth and death of countless civilizations, who had seen stars born and die, who had watched entire dimensions collapse into nothingness, were afraid. They retreated further into the spaces between realities, pulling their essence away from the physical universe, because they remembered the last time humans had gone to war. Admiral Minsu watched his fleet form up around the alien vessels. 200 human ships, each one a weapon of mass destruction disguised as a spacecraft. They moved through space like hunting wolves, their angular hulls cutting through the darkness with predatory grace. All ships report ready, Hyjin announced. Then, let's go solve their problem, Minsu replied. The human fleet was not just approaching the enemy. Every sensor reading, every energy signature, every distortion in space-time around their ships sent the same message to anything intelligent enough to understand it. The God-Killers were hunting again. The battle started at the edge of the Kepler Nebula, where colors swirled through space like a cosmic painting. But the beauty was ruined by what lived there now. The Vorthok Queen Mind had made this place her feeding ground, and the sight was beyond horrible. Massive biomechanical creatures, stretched across distances that should have taken light years to cross. They were not ships in any sense that other species understood. They were living things, grown rather than built, with holes that breathed, and weapons that had teeth. Inside their bodies, the consumed essence of 1,000,000 dead worlds pulsed like infected blood through organic corridors. Captain Yoon, Taeho stood on the bridge of his ship, the Bison's Vengeance, watching the enemy fleet through his viewscreen. The Vorthok vessels were so large that his computers could not properly calculate their size. Some were the size of moons, others stretched longer than planets. All of them were alive, all of them were hungry, and all of them were turning toward the approaching human fleet. "All weapons ready," Taeho announced to his crew. "Let's show them what they get for eating our neighbors." The first shots fired by the human fleet should not have been possible. Taeho's ship launched something called probability cannons, weapons that did not destroy enemy vessels, but instead convinced reality that those vessels had never been built in the first place. Massive Vorthok bioships simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, but erased from history itself. Other human vessels deployed, temporal mines that floated through space like tiny stars. When they reached their targets, they did not explode in the traditional sense. Instead, they aged everything around them by millions of years in a few seconds. Bioships that had lived for eons suddenly became cosmic dust, their ancient bodies finally experiencing the death that time had been trying to give them. But the most terrifying human weapons were called reality anchors. These devices reached out across space and grabbed godlike entities that existed in higher dimensions, dragging them down into normal physics where they could be shot with regular weapons. Beings that had never known physical forms suddenly found themselves vulnerable to simple bullets and explosions. "Target the feeding nodes," Commander Kang Yoonji called out from her position at the tactical station. Her fingers danced across controls that fired weapons at specific parts of the enemy bioships. If they can't digest what they've eaten, they'll have to throw it back up. The strategy was typical human thinking. Instead of trying to destroy something too big to kill, they attacked its ability to function. The feeding nodes were the organs the Vorthok used to process consumed worlds. Without them, the bioships would become sick from their own meals. All across the battlefield, the Vorthok were experiencing something they had never felt before: confusion. For millions of years, they had been the perfect predators. They adapted to every enemy, learned from every battle, evolved past every threat. But humans were different. Where the Vorthok expected logical battle patterns, humans provided pure chaos. Where they looked for strategic thinking, humans gave them madness. That somehow worked perfectly. A boarding party led by Sergeant Park, Dahai managed to get inside one of the bioships. But instead of fighting the organic defenses, they convinced the ship's own immune system that the Vorthok crew were invading viruses that needed to be destroyed. The bioship began attacking its own crew while the humans sat back and watched. But the real turning point in the battle came when the Queen Mind herself decided to take direct action. She was an entity older than most stars, a consciousness that had consumed the thoughts and dreams of billions of beings across the galaxy. Her psychic power was so great that she could dominate entire civilizations with a single thought. She reached out across space with her mind, targeting Admiral Minsu on the bridge of his flagship. The Queen Mind expected to find the organized thoughts of a civilized being, the kind of mental patterns she had dominated countless times before. Instead, she found something that broke her ancient consciousness. Minsu's mind contained 10,000 years of continuous warfare. Every battle his species had fought, every weapon they had invented, every creative solution they had found to impossible problems. She found the memories of humans fighting aliens, fighting each other, fighting gods, fighting reality itself. She saw a species that had never known true peace, that had spent millennia finding new and better ways to destroy anything that threatened them. But worse than the violence was the creativity. Where other species developed weapons through careful research and logical progression, humans invented them through desperation and madness. They built things that should not work, used tactics that violated every rule of warfare, and somehow succeeded through pure, stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The psychic feedback hit the queen mind like a mental explosion, something fundamental in her consciousness shattered, and the damage cascaded through the psychic network that connected all vortices. The perfect unity that had made them unstoppable suddenly became a weakness. As the queen mind's confusion and fear spread to every bioship in the swarm, across the battlefield, Vorthok vessels began moving erratically. Some attacked their own allies. Others simply stopped functioning as their crews became paralyzed by the unfamiliar sensation of doubt. The perfect coordination that had allowed them to consume galaxies fell apart in minutes. Admiral Minsu watched the enemy fleet dissolving into chaos and smiled grimly. "Turns out," he said to his crew, "even cosmic horrors can have mental breakdowns." The war that had seemed impossible to win was over, but the cost of victory was just beginning to be understood by the watching universe. The battle was over, but the silence that followed was more terrifying than the war itself. Across the Kepler nebula, the scattered remains of the Vorthok swarm drifted through space like broken toys. The queen mind had fled to the dark spaces between galaxies, her consciousness shattered and her perfect unity destroyed forever. The alien fleets began their victory celebrations immediately. Ships that had expected to die sent out messages of joy and relief to their homeworlds. The Luminians blazed with happy light patterns, and the crystalline Valtari rang like celebration bells. After facing certain extinction, they were alive, and their civilizations would continue. But the humans were not celebrating. On the bridge of the Ancient's wrath, Admiral Minsu studied battle reports with the same serious expression he had worn during the fighting. Around him, his crew analyzed weapon performance, discussed tactical improvements, and planned modifications for their ships. "The probability cannons worked well," reported Commander Park Dong-hyen, "but they took too much power. We need to find a way to make them more efficient." "The temporal mines were effective against large targets," added Lieutenant Choi Hee-jin, "but they were too slow against fast-moving enemies. Maybe we can increase their deployment speed." The alien observers on the bridge listened to this conversation with growing unease. These humans had just won an impossible victory against a cosmic-level threat, and they were already planning how to fight the next one. A communication signal came in from the Galactic Council's flagship. Admiral Vexstar appeared on the main screen, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of gratitude and welcome. "Admiral Minsu," Vexstar said, "on behalf of all civilized species in the galaxy, we thank you for saving us from extinction. The Council has voted unanimously to offer humanity full membership in our alliance. You would have a permanent seat on the governing body and access to all our combined technologies and resources." Minsu listened politely, then smiled in a way that made every alien on both ships feel nervous. "We appreciate the offer," he said, "but we'll have to decline." The silence that followed was deafening. Species across the galaxy had spent millions of years trying to earn membership in the Galactic Council. It was the highest honor possible, a recognition of civilization and advancement. No one had ever turned it down before. "I don't understand," Vexstar said slowly. "This is the greatest honor we can bestow. Why would you refuse?" Captain Jinho's voice came over the communication channel from his own ship. "We appreciate the invitation, Admiral Vexstar, but we've learned something over the past 10,000 years. Joining larger organizations usually means more meetings, more committees, and more politics than we can handle. We'll be neighbors instead. Good neighbors who help out when needed." The alien representatives looked confused and somewhat hurt. They had expected the humans to be grateful, to want to join their advanced civilization and learn from their wisdom. "But surely you want access to our technologies," pressed Counselor Vexmiawi. "Our scientific knowledge, our cultural achievements." Minsu's grin grew wider. "Thanks. But we prefer to figure things out for ourselves. It's more fun that way." Far across the galaxy, in dimensions that existed beyond normal space and time. An emergency meeting was taking place that no physical being could attend. The cosmic entities known as the Old Ones had gathered in a realm where thought became reality and fear took solid form. These were beings older than the universe itself, entities that had watched galaxies birth and die, creatures so powerful that they existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They had names that could not be spoken by mortal tongues, and forms that could not be perceived by limited minds. But right now, they were all very afraid. The Ancient of Dark Waters, a being made of living shadow and cosmic dread, spoke first. Its voice echoed through dimensions like the sound of dying stars. The humans have learned our names. During their battle with the Vorthok, they accessed knowledge that should have been impossible for them to understand. The Keeper of Broken Time, an entity that existed in all moments simultaneously, added its concern. They have seen what makes gods bleed. They witnessed us retreating, watched us hide from their presence. Our mystique is broken. But the worst fear was expressed by the whisper of ending worlds. They are taking notes. Even now, they study what they learned during the battle. They are planning, preparing, improving their methods. The Old Ones, who had never known fear before meeting humanity, retreated deeper into their hidden dimensions. They had ruled from shadows for billions of years, but now they faced something that terrified them more than the end of existence itself. The humans were curious about them, back on Earth. In a small cafe overlooking the restored Han River, Admiral Minsu sat across from young Lieutenant Yu Ji-hoon. The city around them showed no signs of the cosmic war that had just ended. People walked by on the street, going about their normal lives, unaware that their species had just become the most feared force in the galaxy. "Status report on our next assignment," Minsu said, stirring sugar into his coffee. Ji-hoon looked up from his datapad with interest. "Next week we're scheduled to meet with something called the Eternal Tribunal. According to the files, they've ruled half the galaxy for 50 million years. They want to discuss proper boundaries for newly emerged species." Minsu's scarred face split into the same grin that had terrified cosmic entities. "Think we can convince them to retire?" Ji-hoon matched his admiral's expression. "Should be fun to try." Above them, the human fleet prepared to depart Earth's orbit for regions unknown, leaving behind a galaxy that was grateful for salvation, but terrified of what came next. The gods had a new nightmare, and it was offering to help with their problems.